Hi again.
Welcome back to Coven, a podcast where we cultivate our dream Coven roster, bringing to light the lost stories of enigmatic people throughout history whose fascinating lives echo the complex archetype of the witch. This is season 2, episode 6.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Yeah. Ready to kind of jump in if that's okay.
Absolutely. Do you have a magic moment you wanted to share?
Yes. Yeah, I do actually. I had a difficult time settling on who I wanted to, and I'm gonna like preface everything with, I'm just gonna say it. We record 2 episodes kind of back to back, and so there has been no time between.
You're gonna break the fourth wall,
right? Well, the reason why is because
secrets out.
Jenna and I, like, it just seems like we're always in sync. And there was a person that I had picked originally, and I started to do some research on her, and it just for some reason didn't feel right, and I just kept searching and searching until I found someone that felt right. And the reason why this person felt right to me is because, first of all, this person died, I won't tell you what year, but died on January 11th. So I thought that was synchronistic. And then also this person shares my mother's name and my mother's birthday. And you don't know my mother's name or my mom's birthday, so I can say that. And I'll tell you later. But I felt like that was my cue to choose this person, and I did. And then after we talked about your person, I was like, yes, once again, we are in sync, and this is definitely a magic moment. So. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Crazy.
Love that.
Okay. So are you ready to see this person's chart?
Yeah, let's jump into it.
I'm just going to say that, like you in the last episode, I wasn't exactly sure. Well, there's no birth time for this person. And there were a couple of different charts that I, were kind of going back and forth between, but I settled on this one, and I should have done what you did. And I'm going to do that next time.
Also, I think it's totally valid to just go with your intuition on one. And
yeah. I still felt like maybe it could have been the other one too.
Fair.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So this is the one I went with. So go ahead and tell me what you see. Oh, if you want to tell.
Yeah, this is the part of the show, if you're just joining us, where Coco, I'm gonna give a blind natal chart reading, astrological reading of the person Coco's welcoming into the Coven, because I don't know who Coco researched and brought in today. So this is a blind reading before we tell the story. Okay. All right, so we have a Libra sun in the 12th house, Scorpio rising, Mars, Saturn in Capricorn, a Leo moon, 10th house. Interesting. Leo midheaven. So moon conjunct Uranus. There's like a Chiron trine happening there too. Chiron's in Aries, 16 degrees. Moon is in Leo at 17 degrees. Conjunct Uranus in the midheaven. So definitely some intense, like, I sometimes like to think of the 10th house as like perceived external expectations that someone puts on themselves, or that society puts on them, or just whatever expectation they perceive society has for them. So with the moon there, it's like this heightened feeling of the world needs me for this purpose, to be like, to express myself authentically. But with Uranus there, it's definitely that unstable, chaotic, unpredictable energy. It's almost like this person to the world is a very like chaotic, unstable figure, but it seems like it's coming from this authentic place, but it's maybe not perceived as such. Or it's perceived as like, whoa, this person's a lot, especially with the 10th house and with the midheaven being Leo. And Chiron and Aries, maybe some kind of, I mean, pain around expression and creativity and yeah, I mean, with all of these fire elements, there's definitely like, especially with the Leo moon, it's just a very like expressive, potent inner child. Somebody who at their core just wants to play and be seen and be just express. With the sun in the 12th house in Libra and with the Scorpio rising, that definitely adds a layer of like a cloaking layer. Scorpio risings are very much cards close to chest. Don't want to give too much away. And with Mercury in Scorpio too, definitely some very powerful ability with words, powerful way with words, sort of like a transformative quality naturally with words. The sun in Libra in the 12th house, also opposite that Chiron in Aries. I think whenever somebody has planets in their 12th house, it's that house of like the unseen. It's not visible. So any planets in the 12th house, I think can be really, what they represent can be really confusing for the individual. So again, it's sort of that element of the expression. The sun is expression and expressing of our identity. Sort of like where they shine is a little bit lost on them or confusing to them. It's like they have this way with people because Libra, but they don't maybe see it as such. Like the thing that they're seeing pretty obviously is that Chiron, Neptune, trine, moon, Uranus, midheaven, the fire stuff, like the sides of themselves that maybe come across as abrasive or a lot are the things that they see about themselves. They don't see this part of themselves that is very, I don't know, I keep going back and forth because they would, with the moon in the 10th house, they would be very connected to their authentic expression in that way. So it is very much this like, I'm disruptive and I don't care, but maybe they're missing the part of themselves, or they're not looking or not able to see the part of themselves that is really like, I think it feels more like harmonious. It's a little more balanced. It's a little more like selfless and giving.
Yes.
Okay.
And then what is Chiron?
Yeah, Chiron. Okay, so Chiron. I'm so glad you asked. Chiron is an asteroid in between Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn sort of marks the end of the personal planets in astrology. It's the last of the planets we can see without technology, with the naked eye. The rest of the planets, Uranus through Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, are considered the outer planets. You'll have to have a telescope to see them, and they were discovered much later on. And because of this, because of where Chiron orbits, it's seen as the bridge between the inner and the outer, the personal and the outer.
What is Chiron considered?
We're getting there. So because of this, I just like to preface it because Chiron is known as the wounded healer. I like to preface it because I think it's a lot more dynamic than that. It's not just the wounded healer where like we have pain, but I think it's the wounded healer. I think it really marks the bridge between the inner and the outer, meaning it's our capacity for empathy. And the way that we feel empathy is by experiencing our own pain. And that is truly what brings us to connecting with the other. And so wherever Chiron is, it kind of represents a pain point, a trigger point, but how we can connect with others on a really deep empathetic level. So
I always thought of, I always think of Chiron, like, when I think of the wounded healer, I think of having trauma and then being able to heal from that trauma and then being able to turn around and help others
in
heal.
that specific way, especially, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with Aries in the 6th house, it's definitely, with that like feeling of being autonomous and powerful and capable. And in the 6th house, I mean, potentially related to the body, potentially related to health and things like this. Cool. You see your nod, so I'm just going to see if I'm on the right track with that. The only things else I want to point out, I think, Saturn and Mars are decently close together. You also have the Saturn-Pluto trine. So an intense person. Shocking for our podcast.
I know, right?
And then also, it's a grand trine.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. A grand trine with Pluto, Jupiter, Venus. And the Jupiter-Venus conjunction in Virgo is also pretty potent. In the 11th house, that is definitely... Maria also had this... Oh, wait, no, that the Jupiter-Virgo was... the transit that happened anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
There were a lot of similarities, but go on.
Yeah. Well, Jupiter and Venus together, that is a really beautiful just placement to have. That being said, it's in Jupiter's fall and Venus's fall. Because they love to be in the sign of Pisces, and Virgo is opposite Pisces. So it's not their favorite place to be, but together they are a really powerful force for beauty and art and like romance and gifts and companionship and harmony and things like this. So in the 11th house of community too, is definitely something else, like somebody who's probably very popular. So everything I said about being very abrasive is like colored by this tone of they're a very likable person, probably. Somebody who really, being in Virgo, it's somebody who really knows how to improve things, knows how to make things better. Also in Virgo, and I'm going off of the 6th house too, and the health thing and kind of some other things that you said. So to be transparent, not just based on the birth chart,
right.
I would assume that has something to do with health, because Virgo can also represent health in the body. Doesn't always, but it is definitely a big part of it.
Right on the mark.
Health and healing. And then, with that Saturn and Capricorn, it's very... let's get this done. Let's get the ball rolling. Let's build things. Mars is there too. Very motivated. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Saturn's at home in Capricorn. This person can handle their business. And it's work with Pluto. It's work that's very transformative and very, very much around themes of rebirth and transformation. So I think that's all I got.
Yeah, it's great. Oh my gosh, like right on the money.
Interesting. I'm so curious about how their story is gonna dance with the themes of like popularity and being liked, but then also the clear themes of being like not liked and being shunned.
Wow. You can hang on to that.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and hang on to it. Okay, so are you ready to hear who
I'm
my
so
person is?
ready.
Okay.
Let's go.
So I would like to introduce to you and also welcome into our coven Teresa Urrea, a curandera who is a healer from Mexico.
I have her on my list.
Shut. Oh, you know who she is.
I haven't done research, but I had her book saved and I had her on my list because I was like, I know this name. Love.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Well, it's just crazy because of who you when you were like talking to me about Maria and being a healer and a mystic. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Okay, so I'm gonna put her chart right here too, so I can kind of reference her. So my mom's name is Teresa, and she was born on October 15th.
That's also my mom's name.
Oh, no way, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Makes
wow. Yeah. And they used to call her Teresita when she was a little girl. So I would like to dedicate this episode to my mom.
Oh.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Coco's mom.
So right when I saw her, I was like, this is the one. Yes, because my mom's name is Teresa, and also because they were born on the same day, but also because this is probably the main reason. The dictator that we were talking about in the last episode, Porfirio Díaz, was so threatened by her that he called her the most dangerous girl in Mexico.
Wow.
And so I'm just going to preface this entire episode by saying that there were a lot of different sources, and a lot of different sources that I felt like were reliable sources, but also that had different versions of what went on in her life. And so when we were talking in the last episode about certain powers that be keeping certain parts of people's stories hidden, I very much felt those powers at play with Teresa, because there were a lot of conflicting stories about what actually occurred in her life. So I want to preemptively apologize to any historians if you know more about Teresa than I do, because there was only so many hours in a week that you can do this research. And I actually started to get quite confused after a while about what was really going on in her life. And so go ahead. What were you going to say?
I always run into that with these, that I reach a point where I'm like, oh my God, there's so much more research that I need to do to really fully understand the story, and which sources are the best sources and which sides of the story to use. And I feel you.
Yeah. So that's why I want to preface this episode with, if I get anything wrong, I apologize. My intention definitely was not to get anything wrong. So you're talking about intentions. And I tried to cross-reference, and there were, usually whatever I have here, or what I have here, I saw in more than one place. But with that being said, I'm not exactly sure if all of it is accurate.
Well, your intention wasn't to get anything wrong, but that doesn't mean you didn't have an intention, because your intention
Exactly.
was to get things correct to the best of your abilities.
Yes,
so.
exactly, yes. So with that being said, there is an author named David D. Romo, and he wrote a book called Ringside Seat to a Revolution. And he writes in that book, in many ways, the Mexican Revolution on the border began with her, which I thought was pretty amazing. And then this is just a quote from Teresa before she healed someone. She said, I quote, "I am going to cure you with the blood from my own heart." So she had many nicknames. She was known as La Santa de Cabora, which means the Saint of Cabora. She was known as the Mexican Joan of Arc. She was called Teresita by her followers. She was called La Santa. This one is one that I'm not exactly sure about, but I saw it in a couple of places. Her opponents called her the Nogales Witch. She was known as La Niña de Cabora. She was known as Queen of the Yaquis. The Yaquis are an indigenous tribe in Mexico. And then my all-time favorite, The Most Dangerous Girl in Mexico by Porfirio Díaz. So her mother's name was Cayetana Chavez, and she was an indigenous woman who worked for Teresa's father. Teresa's father's name was Tomás Urrea, and he was a wealthy ranch owner. So I could not find very much about her mother at all. The only thing that I could find that was consistent is that that her mother was 14 when she gave birth to Teresa. Go ahead.
just 14 is also Maria and Maria's mother when they were married.
Yes,
That age.
when you said that, I was like, okay, and I was really glad that you brought that up because Chris and I were talking about it, and I was like, I wonder if it was consensual, but then again, if it was common for young Indigenous women to marry at 14, maybe it was, but they weren't married. They just had Teresita, and apparently. So these were the only two adjectives or the only two adjectives about her mother and her aunt who raised her. So one adjective was bitter aunt and quiet mother. That's literally all I could find about the two women that raised her up until she was 12 years old, and then mom just disappeared. Like, just there's nothing else about her. Nobody knows what happened to her. Nobody knows where she went. She just kind of went away. So anyway, Teresa was actually born Niña Garcia Nonna Maria Rebecca Chavez. And she was born on October 15th, 1873 in Ocoroni, Sinaloa, Mexico. And she was considered a mystic and a miracle worker. The government accused her of witchcraft and political insurgency. It is said that she inspired several armed indigenous rebellions, even though she herself advocated for nonviolent resistance. So that's just to kind of give you like a broad overview. So she's got a very interesting story. And I would love to be able to take more time to research to find out, like the details of these stories. But basically, she grew up in poverty and marginalization, but that was crucial in forming her connection with the indigenous communities. And when she grew up, she actually knew at least one indigenous language. And she began to have these cataleptic episodes. Do you know what what a cataleptic episode is?
I don't think so.
I didn't know what it was either. I knew it. I've heard catatonic before, but I'd never heard of cataleptic. So, I'll get to that in a second. But basically, so she grew up with her mom and her aunt until mom disappeared. And then there was some kind of rift between Porfirio Diaz and her dad or something. And I think it had to do with the fact that her father actually did support the indigenous communities and the poor farmers. And so the opposition created some tension there. And so Diaz's policies forced the family to move from Akiwikichi. Sorry, that was a hard one to say even for me. To Cabora, Sonora, to escape political reprisal. And this would set the stage for what would ultimately be Teresa's emergence as a spiritual and revolutionary figure. So all of a sudden, okay, so as she was growing up, her father just like ignored her, basically, like she wasn't there. And then all of a sudden, when she was 15 years old, it was like he realized that she was there. And yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Again, there was so much there just was not a lot of information, a lot of details. So I have no idea why that happened or what happened, but it was like literally it was like one day she didn't exist to him, and then all of a sudden she did exist, and then he moved her into the house from the servants' quarters that she was living in. And when that happened, she became an apprentice to an indigenous woman named Wila, who had been she's a Yaqui curandera, or healer is what that means. And she learned about medicinal herbs and folk remedies, and she studied midwifery and healing practices. So Teresa's transformation happened when, so again, conflicting conflicting stories about why she fell into this cataleptic state. In one place that I was doing my research, it said that there was possibility that there was a sexual assault, but I only saw that one time, and that might not have been actually what happened. But basically, she fell into like a death-like state for 14 days. Like, I guess the heart slows down when you fall into this state, and your body gets really cold, and so they actually thought that maybe she was dead. So here's where things get a little confusing. In some instances, it said that she would have these short bursts of convulsions in between the state, and that not even 6 men could hold her down when she was, having these convulsions. And then she would have these moments of lucidity where she would talk about visions, and she was also expressing a desire to eat dirt, which I found interesting. And also it kind of was reminiscent of this is a side note, but the Netflix show 100 Years of Solitude. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be based on the book by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And there's an actual medical term for it. It's called geophagia. And it's there wasn't a real clear I tried to find out like what causes this, and there's no real clear answer as to why this happens to some people, but sometimes people just want to go and eat dirt. But anyway, in the Netflix show,
I actually don't know the show. I know the book. That's why I knew the name.
Yeah,
you
do.
Know that they made a show out of it.
Yeah. And in the book / show, I can't say the book because I haven't read the book, but in the show, there is a character who shows up out of the blue, and she's just eating dirt all the time. So anyway, the family prepared a wake, and the father ordered a coffin to be built for Teresita. And again, this sounds very dramatic. I'm not exactly sure if this is how it happened or not, but the accounts that I read were that they were at the wake, and she was in the coffin, and then she sat up out of the blue and like did this deep inhale, and suddenly she was alive again. And everybody was shocked. And then she said, it's a good thing that you made this coffin. I don't need it, but Wila's going to need it in 3 days.
Whoa.
And then 3 days later, Wila died. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I hope that's true, because that's an insane, interesting story.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see in her chart where there's a lot, I guess.
Yeah. So that was one of the reasons why I had a hard time with the rise. So that's why I put that's why I put Libra in the 12th house.
The sun in the 12th house definitely is that like connection to death and the unseen world.
Yeah, and then
I guess the sun opposite Neptune also.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Saturn is also death, and I guess having just like a lot of aspects to Saturn makes sense that like death is something that's really
and
potent.
And the sun opposing Neptune in the 6th house, house having to do with our physical body, the 12th house having to do with death and dying, and then Neptune, confusion about whether or not she was dead or alive.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
Yeah, and then the Chiron connection to the moon, which I associate also with the physical body, healing the physical body, which is really what she did. But there's a lot of social justice that she did as well. So Uranus up there in Leo, and she also spoke in front of groups of people. So that was another reason why I put her.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then she's
too close to home, something she cares deeply about, expressing it and letting that be her legacy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then also her Jupiter and Venus conjunction in the 11th house. I had never really associated Jupiter with spirituality, but then it's like,
it's the traditional ruler of Pisces. So,
right.
Yeah, in that way, it's similar to Neptune in some ways.
Yeah.
So
And so to have that conjunction, I put it in the 11th house because she would literally speak in front of hundreds, and I've read in other accounts thousands of people, and
11th house, large
groups,
communities.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously like her Mercury in the first house, I did that as well, just because, you know, speaking in front of people. And then the Pluto trine with Jupiter and Venus as well.
What was your other choice for her rising sign?
So Gemini, for some reason, Gemini just seemed to kind of everything seemed to fall into place.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I kind of toyed with Pisces as well as her rising sign, but
That's funny. The same two that I had for
exactly. That's yeah. Every time you do a person or I have to do a blind reading, and it's like I'm looking at this chart and I'm like, wow, this looks very similar to a chart that I'm gonna having you look at soon. So anyway, so when she predicted Wila's death, that was what started the transformation for her, because suddenly people saw her as a someone with special spiritual I don't know, talents, I guess.
ability.
So it established her reputation as someone with divine gifts. So during this cataleptic state where she was kind of in and out, she reported receiving visions from angels and saints and the Virgin Mary. So once this happened, she developed this unique healing practice that combined indigenous wisdom and spiritual insight. And the one of the things that was very important in her healing methods was the belief of the people that she was healing in her ability to heal. That was something that was important.
Maria also spoke of that. I didn't really mention that in hers, but that was also, it was like if the other person didn't believe that it would work, then it wouldn't work.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So she would mix earth with her saliva and sometimes with her blood. But what's interesting is the account of her when she made that quote about "I will heal you with the blood from my heart" was she had spit into her hands and there was blood in her saliva, and then she would mix it with dirt and try to heal people like that. Or not try to heal people, she would heal people like that. And the first healing that she did was a young indigenous girl who was brought to her who had one leg that was shorter than the other, and it made it difficult, if not impossible, for her to walk. And so Teresa put her hands on the girl, stretching her shrunken leg. And I should also say that these healing these healing sessions that she would have were not short. Like they would sometimes last an hour and a half. But so she, you know, was doing the stretching the shrunken leg, and then she told the young girl, "Throw your walking stick away," and she did, and the young girl was able to get up and walk. So that was the first person that she healed. She also would help women when they were in labor with their pain management by putting them into a trance state. And so that was another reason why I was kind of like looking at Neptune, or not Neptune, sorry. Why I was looking at Pisces, because of being in that trance. But then also the Neptune Saturn square, I kind of feel like putting yourself in a trance state, you have to have what's the word I'm looking for? With Saturn, you have to have intense focus in order to be able to do that. So it's kind of a weird thing. You're putting yourself in this state, but the way to get to that state is to have intense.
To stay in that state is hard.
Yeah.
Like you can, it happens to a lot of people a lot of the time, but to be able to like maintain it and to hold it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is also, I think, why Saturn and Neptune together represent addiction and substance abuse a lot of the time, because it is getting trapped in that trance-like state, in that escaped state.
Oh, I never thought of it like that, but
fun
yeah.
connection there.
Yeah, that is. One of the things that was most significant about her healing is that she never charged people. She saw her services just like Maria. Yeah. She saw her services as like viewing her abilities as a divine gift was meant for her to serve the people. So at the ranch at Cabora, once she healed this first young woman, the ranch transformed into a pilgrimage site with anywhere from hundreds and, according to some accounts, thousands of people seeking her healing daily. And her influence extended beyond physical healing to spiritual and social realms as she began to address crowds about social justice and divine connection. Her growing following among the indigenous communities and her challenge to religious authorities soon drew attention of both the church and the state. As I'm sure you can imagine, Porfirio Díaz heard about this, and so did a certain bishop, and they were not happy about it. And so this is why I was saying in the last episode that there was a biased attitude towards indigenous healers. And so anyway, Mexico City newspapers reported on the quote unquote young girl of 17 as a healer of indigenous people near the Mayo River. But they would describe her ability as just superstitions of the quote unquote class of Indians. And suggesting that the Yaqui and the Mayo, who were the main two indigenous groups that were living where she was living, were quote unquote less civilized or quote unquote less evolved, insinuating that the indigenous just didn't know any better. So at this time, when she was only 17 years old, United States newspapers also picked up on her abilities and started writing about, the young Mexican girl healer in Mexico who was able to have these practices.
I think the Scorpio rising makes sense because of the Leo in the 10th house with the Uranus there, with the disruptive, like known for being disruptive and like politically rebellious. Big time
Politically rebellious, that's why I was like, this is my girl. So anyway, she was known for her humility and intense charisma, and she also combined her indigenous healing practice with the Christian or Catholic elements, like we
also
discussed.
I just want to say humility and intense charisma for the moon in the 10th house in Leo next to Uranus is like exactly that. Humility and intense and is what she's known for.
Right, because her midheaven's there too. And I think it's really interesting too that her midheaven, well, I put her midheaven at 0 degrees, but it feels right because right there on the cusp of the 9th house for several reasons. She did end up traveling and quite a bit, and she also spirituality, religion. So she would treat everyday illnesses, injuries, cancer, blindness, stroke, paralysis, all the things. So the healing practice inevitably intersected with the social and political tensions of her time. And even though she maintained that she never sought political influence, her message of spiritual equality and social justice resonated deeply with the indigenous communities that were suffering under Díaz's oppressive regime. Her like I was talking about a few minutes ago, her challenge to religious authority began when she declared that people needed no intermediary to connect with God, that they could directly connect with God themselves if they wanted to.
It's always so controversial.
Yeah, I know. I know. Why is that? I don't understand.
Because it takes away the element of control.
Power.
It takes the power away from
No,
spirituality.
you're absolutely right.
You don't need anybody, then what good is a church?
Right. No, you're absolutely right. So
Well, for community, I understand why people like church.
yeah,
I'm not bashing on people who like church, but the
no,
power of the church goes away outside of that feeling of community of people who share your beliefs. You don't need anyone to give you God.
exactly. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I think that there is something to be said for communities that, or people who can get together and be in community with one another. And also, in a spiritual or religious way, whatever it may be, but there is a slippery slope there and a fine line when there's a lot of power that can be involved in it doesn't always happen, but it happens a lot.
When someone has the power to give you God,
Yes, exactly.
and you don't believe you have that on your own,
Right.
That's a pretty intense power.
Yes, exactly. So because she was telling people, you don't need that shit. The bishop of Sonora got pretty pissed off and basically condemned her as a heretic.
Classic.
And yeah, exactly. And threatened to excommunicate her followers, which,
Jeez.
yeah, I know. So the political implications also became clear as the indigenous communities, particularly the Yaqui and the Mayo, began incorporating her image and teachings into their resistance movements. Again, even though Teresa advocated for nonviolent resistance, her name became a battle cry for several uprisings. And I'm going to talk about one in a second, but I'm not going to do it justice. And if I were to go into a lot of detail about this, we would be here for 3 hours. So I'm just going to just do a quick overview of what happened. During the late 1800s and the early 1900s in Mexico, like we talked about in the last episode, there was a lot of profit for a few and poverty for many. Sound familiar at all?
I have no idea. Not familiar with that.
Yeah. It had to do with Díaz wanting to modernize Mexico, and a part of modernizing Mexico was taking over indigenous lands and raping them of their resources, talking about metals, silver, gold, copper mines, and well, actually, let me back up a little bit. So when Teresa would perform her healings, she would speak out against doctors and their barbaric tools, saying that they were instruments of the devil. And she spoke out against the evils of money. And this is where I'm just going to say, if to the listeners, do some research on how the medical industrial industry came about, because there are lots of things about the medical industrial industry that have to do with just straight up money. So just keep that in mind when hearing her say that that doctors are barbaric and that their tools are barbaric, because I mean, some of them are, and some of them, especially during that time, really were. She also spoke out against the evils of money. Does that sound familiar too?
They were, I mean, Teresa is 10 years older, 11 years older. So they're same time period.
Exactly.
Super interesting.
Yeah, that's why when I saw, I was like, what is going on? One of these days, we're going to have to put up our charts so people can see how similar they are.
That's true.
So one of the factors that came into play was the fact that a wage-based economy was relatively new in Mexico, that they had been living in a trade-based economy. So when a wage-based economy was introduced, this is what brought the poverty, because, corporations.
Can we go back to trading?
Yeah, please. I would love that.
I'll trade an astrology reading for some bread.
Well,
Maybe a little more than bread, but
as a hairdresser and as someone who this trade has been just the people who are in this industry marginalized so much, I'm willing to bet anybody anything that it would probably be worth a lot more if we were trading, to be honest.
Okay, more than bread. Maybe give me a car. Is that?
Oh no, I'm just saying I would love to do trade again because trading for haircuts, everybody needs their haircut.
I thought you were saying astrology. That's funny.
Oh no.
No, you're right for sure.
Yeah. The hairdressing industry is we're treated like shit. Please stop treating us like shit. I'm begging you guys.
A haircut changes my whole world. Getting my hair done is like so necessary. I feel like I'm empowered again. I can suddenly take on the world in a whole new way. I appreciate.
Well, you're aware, but I've been doing hair for 30 years and people try to talk to me about my prices as if I didn't deserve to get a raise at some fucking point in time in my career. But anyway, I digress. This brought on poverty, and she spoke in sympathy for poverty of most. She also said that God was going to punish the sinners, aka the government members and the supporters of a godless environment. So this did not go over well at all, especially because she had a platform. This would be like equivalent to a modern day, very popular influencer. So
Leo 10th house.
Yeah.
I think you're right about that.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Because I feel bad. I was talking to Chris about it, and I went through every single sign, and I was like, it's not this one, it's not this one, it's not this one. But anyway, so she was detained at some point in time, and this is where things get confusing because I am not exactly sure at what point in time she got detained. I'm not sure if she got detained, then let go of to go back home and continue healing, and then she was sent into exile, or if she was detained and directly from being detained, she was exiled after, because she was eventually sent out of Mexico.
Okay.
So anyway, what ended up happening is, and again, this is a very brief overview of this this rebellion that happened. But basically, Díaz's military went in and destroyed a Tomochic church, and Tomochi is a small town in the mountains of Guerrero. And a newspaper that was pro Porfirio wrote some really awful things about the people in Tomochi. So the Tarahumara, who are the people from Tomochi, rebelled. And that was like the first kind of like wave or the first incident that happened. But then what really brought Teresa to the forefront of being politically rebellious was after that, a group of 200 Yaqui and Mayo attacked a mining town in the name of Santa Teresa, and they were shouting "Viva la Santa de Cabora," and they held out federal forces. They almost won.
Wow.
And so that is why Porfirio was like, no, not cool. You got to go. So I wanted to give you a chart so that you could see the
Why in my head was I just thinking, remember the Alamo?
Oh,
It's like they almost won. They held out.
They almost
Kinda
won.
similar.
Yeah. So when I saw tell me what you see.
Yeah, this was that rebellion, this fight.
This happened on May 15th, 1892. So this transit chart is accurate. Mm-hmm. What do you see?
Okay. Well, the sun going over her Pluto, in Taurus. So definitely that shining a light on her transformative nature. And then Saturn, the sun is trining Saturn, which is right over her natal, that Jupiter-Venus conjunction.
What about this right here?
And Uranus right over Mercury. Saturn, though, over the the Jupiter Venus is definitely trining the sun. It's definitely like some work is happening, some hard work is happening, in her namesake. And then Uranus over Mercury is definitely very disruptive.
Right. So she was communicating to people, and then because of that,
but
it
from
became
her communication, you're right, from her words,
chaos and disruption. And then I also noticed Chiron over Uranus here as well. So like her
the wounds from the collective being stimulated by, again, the way she presents to people.
Yeah. And then the Jupiter conjunct Chiron here.
Again,
that was crazy. Yeah.
That magnification of pain points
and her healing.
Yeah.
So pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So because they almost won, Porfirio blamed Teresa and she was exiled. So she never claimed direct involvement in the uprisings, and she advocated for nonviolent resistance. So she was ordered out of Mexico in 1892 when she was 19 years old. And
she was 19?
Yes.
At this point? Oh my God.
And that is when he called her the most dangerous girl in Mexico.
Wow.
I mean, it's just interesting to me. Yeah, I know. And I'm not exactly sure why or where this came in, but I saw it in a couple of places. 500 soldiers enforced the exile. Because, she's
most powerful, most dangerous woman.
Yeah, exactly. So her entire family was forced to leave. So her dad, and I'm not sure who else, but like everybody had to go. So so in 1892, at the young age of 19, she went to live in Nogales, Arizona, and she continued doing her healing work. People continued to flock to her. Thousands, again, is what I read. And so they were there, and then she moved around in Arizona, and again, confusing. So I'm not exactly sure what came first or whatever, but basically, on August 12th of 1896, a group of Yaqui and Tarahumara indigenous stormed the Mexican customs house at Nogales and called themselves Teresitas. She denied involvement, and then there were at least three assassination attempts on her life after. So she had to move to Clifton, Arizona, where she met this guy named Guadalupe Rodriguez, a Yaqui Indian who worked in the copper mines near Clifton. And the two places that I read about him was that they got married, and the very next day he lost his mind and tried to kill her. Like,
oh my goodness.
Literally shot at her, but missed. And he was found to be insane by the court and sent to an insane asylum.
Also one thing about Scorpio risings is, though they have this like cover, because Leo is their 10th house, it's like they're always being exposed. They're always being seen. They're always in the public in some way, no matter how much they want to hide.
Yeah.
Not that she really wanted to hide that much because her moon and Uranus and everything is there, but it's interesting, like, even when she's like laying low, she has all this heat on her.
Yeah, exactly.
I also love the Teresitas. It's like the Beliebers, or like like the fan names.
The what? The Beliebers? What's that? Like
Justin Bieber.
Oh, okay. Seriously.
like fan names that fans give
Beliebers.
themselves.
I get it.
Yeah.
That's really clever.
Coco and I are from different generations.
Yeah, I just turned 50, you guys.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. So anyway,
the Teresitas. I'm a Teresita.
yeah, we are Teresitas. So what ended up happening is they ended up moving to El Paso, Texas. And again, when she moved, she continued to treat people, and every place that she went, it always said 250 people daily, 250 people
Wow.
daily, 250 people daily. And so she treated both poor and wealthy, including El Paso's mayor and ex-governor of Chihuahua. And she ended up having to leave there due to harassment and death threats. I know everybody wanted her gone.
It really makes sense, though, what I was saying earlier with the, like, there's this conflict
Exactly.
between,
Yes.
like, being loved and being hated
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
exactly.
interesting.
So she leaves El Paso and she moves to, guess where?
San Francisco.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, she moved to San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yes.
Here we are again.
Yes.
I need to go back and like count all the people, because just in this season alone, Alice was connected to San Francisco. Anais was connected. And then I guess we're just at 3, but still three
Yeah.
for
3 out of 6.
3 out of
That's half.
6.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, she this is on the internet, so I'm not doxing anybody, but she lived at 2630 California Street, which is nearby. And I think I'm going to drive by there tonight before or after we leave. But on her way to San Francisco, she first stopped in San Jose, and she cures a 3-year-old white boy. It said this online of a wealthy family who had spinal meningitis and who had been deemed incurable by doctors. So she stopped there and she cures him. And then I'm thinking because of that, she got interviewed by the San Francisco Examiner and begins to be promoted by the San Francisco Examiner as the quote unquote Mexican girl healer. And even though at this point she's 27 years old, she's a grown ass woman, but they're still calling her a girl. And this is I believe where she's famed she's given the name the Joan of Arc of the Yaqui Indians of Sonora. So she ends up getting a manager named John Suits, who, I know the name, right? Suits. I thought that was hilarious too. Sierra's laughing.
John Suits.
Yeah. It's very appropriate because he sees potential in her to make some money. So he becomes her manager. And
welcome to California, Teresa.
Welcome to the United States, basically.
Yeah.
But during this time, there's an appetite for Buffalo Bill Wild West shows and things like that.
My girl Annie Oakley, love her.
yeah, exactly. So he was thinking along those lines, right? And so when she ends up doing a show, it's not received very well. And the reason for this is because she did in the show what she did normally, which was take 90 minutes to heal people. And so it was basically just her putting her hands on someone to heal them. And everybody was like, this is boring. I'm going to go. And so people just like walked out in the middle of her doing this healing. So anyway, apparently she was basically like held hostage by this guy and because they had some kind of contract. And so this group of spiritual women saw this somehow or realized this, and they decided to talk to her and help her to file a complaint to get out of this contract. And so she ends up getting out of the contract with him. And the San Francisco judge, thank you, San Francisco, tells her that she's free to go. So she changes the impression of her from the name of herself in the San Francisco Examiner to the Mexican girl healer to just the Mexican healer. And it's not clear as to whether or not she did that. One of the speculations is it's cheaper. The other speculation, what I would like to believe is, she was like, I'm not a fucking girl anymore. Like I'm a grown ass woman and I'm just a healer. So anyway, in 1901, she ends up moving to New York City, and she lives there for a year where she has a baby with her interpreter, and her interpreter's name is John Van Order. And then And then in 1902, she moves back to California, but instead of just back to San Francisco, she moves to Los Angeles. And again, another very long story, which I'm just going to totally gloss over here. But I think it's important to say this about her. So basically, just bear with me here. There are migrant workers in California, not just Mexican migrant workers, but also Chinese migrant workers and other migrant workers. And every year there was this fiesta that would happen. And it is kind of a weird thing. The irony of it is that these fiestas were put on by the migrant workers, and I don't know, maybe the governor or the mayor or someone decided that they wanted to invite Theodore Roosevelt to show him a good time at one of these fiestas. And so there was a union, and they were called the United Federation of Mexican Workers, and they got together and they were like, we're gonna protest, sabotage, so that they can't get into the fiesta, or the fiesta can't happen, or something along those lines. And so the LAPD, big shocker there, wanted to basically put a stop to the migrant union workers who wanted to protest. It's very confusing. So, and as you know, they use excessive force. And so Teresa decided to get a group of 28 women, and she marched with them. And that basically stopped the LAPD from violent, excessive force against the union workers. So I thought that was important to say, 'cause again, with her social justice and being for the people, no matter where she was for the people. So anyway, with that being said, she has another baby, Magdalena, and sadly, she dies of tuberculosis on January 11th, 1906, at the age of 33.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
young. So, I mean, her impact was she inspired pre-revolutionary movements. She influenced borderlands culture. She advanced indigenous rights. She challenged religious authority. She was a proto-feminist, and she combined healing with social justice. And her influence extended far beyond her short life, reshaping spiritual and political landscapes of the borderlands. And her integration of healing practices with social justice created a model for spiritual activism that continues to inspire movements today. In El Paso's Segundo Barrio, people still pray to her for guidance, particularly in times of community struggle. So this is why I wanted to invite her into our coven, because I feel like she is a quote unquote witch in the coven sense. She challenged patriarchal authority, and she combined indigenous and Catholic practices, and not that is a value of being in our coven, but I feel like she did what one of our professors, Jake Sherman, would call integral hermeneutics, where
Syncretist, that's been a common thread of so many of these people, is they're combining different cultures, cosmologies, and spiritualities, and kind of showing they're acting as bridges between the gaps that we've created. And in that way, I think that is a really I guess core theme of what we're trying to do here with these stories.
Yeah. And I think that it's also, I mean, it's rebellious in the best way, because you are combining, like you were saying, two different belief systems. And that is a way to bridge,
dissolving the barriers. And the barriers are what keeps us separated, is what keeps us disempowered, right? We're super powerful when we're together. You're pointing at the Saturn.
The Saturn-Neptune square.
The Saturn-Neptune. Yeah, dissolving, quite literally dissolving the barriers.
Yeah, exactly. She's natural healing methods. She fought for social justice. She connected deeply with earth-based spirituality, and she, most importantly, in my view, empowered marginalized communities, which is what needs to happen. So, this is why I would like to invite Teresita or Teresa or the Mexican Joan of Arc or the most dangerous woman. Yes, the most dangerous woman in Mexico.
That for her.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is that, like, when I think about that period of time, I took a Mexican art, Chicano art history course at Berkeley, and we talked about the Mexican Revolution. We talked about like all these different pictures of like, these women with, guns and bullets and all this other, garb that showed, their bravery. But she did it without any of that. And she was considered the most dangerous woman in Mexico at 19 years old. And she never had any, I don't think she had a violent bone in her body, So I would like to invite and welcome her into our coven to hang out with all of the other really cool.
Welcome, Teresita. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, and I forgot. I also had one last chart of her death, and I thought
moon. Yeah. Kind of emphasizing her legacy of that humble, what did you say with the before, when I was like, that's like exactly the being known for her humility and
what did you
say earlier,
her rebelliousness, or her,
like you said like humble. When we get this back, I'm gonna have to look back, and when we like you.
I don't remember.
No, it was like humble disruption, or you said something along those lines. Anyway, the moon leaving her legacy on that side of her. Yeah, and Jupiter going right over her Pluto.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I also thought it was interesting that Pluto was actually in Gemini when she died, which is like one house over in the 8th house. So it's like part of leaving her legacy, and also being in Gemini, because again she spoke in front of people, and then I didn't really know what to think about all of this down here.
Yeah, I mean, 3rd house is, that's like, all of that's like right in between her Mars Saturn. It's kind of like her Mars and Saturn are sandwiching the Uranus, Venus, Sun, midheaven.
Yeah.
Sort of like her life's work in a way.
Oh yeah, you're
being
right.
encompassed in that, like the harmony and the social work with the Venus there, and then Uranus, the activism and the rebellion, and then the Sun, the expression, sort of.
Yeah, you're right. And then Mercury being right there too, pretty close as well, at 28 degrees of Sagittarius. This is why I really enjoy going over these charts with you. Because,
I know, it's fun. You pick up things that I miss.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So welcome, Teresita.
Welcome, Teresita.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's she doing in our coven meeting room? I really feel like she's with Sorwana.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I feel like they would vibe.
I was thinking she was probably with Maria.
Well, yeah, for sure.
All 3 of them are hanging out.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see, because she's. I just imagine her as this like bold, like loud, like joyful.
So I don't think that she was actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess I'm basing it off of the Venus Jupiter thing, but you're right. I mean, and I guess the moon in Leo and Uranus in Leo.
Yeah.
I guess I'm imagining somebody who's just like very like like confident, charismatic.
Yes, she was confident and charismatic, but I didn't see anything where she was like, out there. Like, and I think that might be the Scorpio rising,
Sure,
right?
keeping it all, and the sun in the 12th house. Yeah,
like
keeping it all quite.
And especially like in the pictures that you see of her, she looks very like there's one picture in particular where it looks like she's healing a baby, and she's like covered, and you can just kind of see her face and her hands, and her the demeanor that I was picking up was more reserved, but at the same time, those of us who have like Leo in our charts, we know that like when Leo comes out.
Yeah, right.
Look at me.
And she has some intense Leo placements. I also wonder how she would get along with Ana Mendieta's.
I think that they would get along great because again, she healed people with
the activism
with dirt.
too.
Yeah, and the activism.
The dirt.
Yeah, because Ana was
Wasn't
all
there
about
something with Ana eating dirt too, or just
not eating dirt.
I know
but
she would like buried herself and was in the dirt, but
all the time. She would do these siluetas, right? So she would embed herself within the earth,
right?
And in water and in landscapes and and
I don't know why I was thinking there was something about her also eating the dirt with something. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
I don't think so.
Because that sounded familiar when you mentioned eating dirt, and I don't know why it sounded familiar.
We'll find out. When we listen back.
Yeah, but I think like the activism side there for sure. Yeah, and obviously she would get along with Maria and
and
cool.
then we could hear the harp playing in the background. And,
it's funny.
Yeah. So anyway,
sweet.
So welcome and thank you all for listening.
Well, do you? I can give my hint for next week if we want. My hint will be
it's hard to give a hint without giving it away.
I don't want to give too much away, but I'll just say I don't this is general and it's definitely like a pretty good hint, but I don't think it gives much away, but I'll just say movies.
Oh, okay, that is a good hint.
Yeah. I don't think you're gonna get it based on that.
No,
so.
There's lots of people in movies.
Yeah, that's all. Okay,
all right,
see y'all next time.
Bye.
This has been another episode of Coven.
Yeah.